25, the city is unable to provide an in-person location for the public to listen to the virtual city council meeting this evening. Meetings are still accessible to the public, and public comment is able to be submitted. To view live, the city website, www.sammamish.us/TV21. The city YouTube and Comcast Channel 21 within the city of Sammamish only. To view later, meeting videos are available the day after the meeting on the city website, YouTube, and Comcast Channel 21, again within the city of Sammamish only. Pledge of Allegiance. Pam, you've got the flag. How about if you lead us in the pledge?
Certainly. Everyone will rise. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Next, we have approval of the agenda. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Second.
I have a first and a second. Any discussion? Oh. Okay, I need to remove item number. Okay, I need to remove number 18. Okay.
So moved.
All right. With that change, approval of the agenda with the change of removal of number 18. All in favor, say aye.
Madam Mayor, don't we need to vote for it?
Pardon?
Never mind.
Was there a second on that?
No, there wasn't. I moved
Yeah.
it. It needs to be seconded, Karen.
Jason
Actually,
seconded it.
There was a second.
For the
Not for
amendment?
the revised version. I second the revised version. Thank you.
That was Ken, but okay. All right, so I thought that was Ken. Okay, Ken, are you okay with seconding the revised version?
I have a question before we vote.
All right.
Is there a reason why we're not getting an update?
Okay, I'm sorry, I did not hear the question. It was
My
muffled.
Yes, Mayor, members of council. Councilwoman Stewart asked why there was no update. This was supposed to be pulled off the agenda a few days ago, and it was just got our wires crossed. It didn't have the completeness to satisfy Public Works and myself. I was a little caught off guard this morning when I went over the agenda with the mayor and deputy mayor, and it has since Public Works put a memo out pulling it off, and we'll bring it back at another date when it's more complete.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Now moving forward with the, I was going on the fact that we don't argue with changes to or removal from stuff from this, but okay. All those in favor?
Madam Mayor, I wasn't arguing, I just asked.
No, sorry. All those in favor, or any other discussion on the agenda? Okay. All those in favor of the agenda as amended, say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Great, okay. And Dave, thanks for that clarification, because I didn't know that either. Okay. Next is emergency management, COVID-19 update from Andrew Stevens. Andrew, are you online or up there in the cloud here somewhere?
Yes, Mayor. Can you hear me okay?
Can.
Okay, wonderful. Good evening, Mayor, council members, city manager. My name is Andrew Stevens. I'm the emergency manager for Eastside Fire and Rescue. So 1 year ago, the first case of COVID-19 was reported in the United States, just north of us in Snohomish County. Now, 1 year later, and COVID-19 continues to spread like a wildfire across the nation and has resulted in over 400,000 fatalities and 1 in every 14 Americans being infected. More than 200 Americans die every minute, yet every day I still see or hear debates over the severity of this pandemic or the need to continue to comply with COVID-19 mitigations. While most areas of the country are struggling under the massive increases in cases and hospitalizations following the holiday peak, statistics for King County are beginning to trend downward, hopefully highlighting that the worst of the current surge is over. That does not mean that restrictions should be lifted or that it is now safe to socialize outside with your families. It simply means that we are finally seeing numbers lower than pre-Thanksgiving rates again. However, they are still higher than any of the months prior to last November. The bulk of what I'd like to discuss tonight is around vaccines, as there is still a lot of concern over eligibility and access for many in the community. So first and foremost, the governor recently made modifications to the state's vaccination phases and raised the state to level 1B1. This change, along with revisions, means that healthcare professionals, high-risk responders, long-term care facility residents, and other workers in healthcare settings are now eligible. The recent changes also opened vaccination eligibility to all individuals 65 years or greater and people 50 and over who live in multi-generational housing. The state has also released a new COVID-19 dashboard, which, besides offering insights into statewide case counts, hospitalizations, deaths, and testings, is now offering vaccination data broken down by county. Now, the situation around vaccines and their distributions is ever evolving. In fact, just this evening, I discovered that several QFCs in the region are now providing the vaccine, including the QFC in Quahani. This was not communicated to me by any public health official. I was simply reviewing the list of facilities available on the State Department of Health website and noticed the recent additions. Some of the frustrations and confusion we are encountering is centered around understanding one's eligibility, navigating the web-based platforms, and booking appointments for the vaccine, even if you are eligible. The state's primary tool for doing this, Phase Finder, has been encountering technical issues since its release and has often crashed. When the tool is operational, it guides users through a series of questions, confirming eligibility, urges users to take a screenshot of their status, and then provides a list of sites where the vaccine is available. However, many are encountering issues with scheduling their appointments through these third-party sites or finding that the providers are either booked out for several weeks to come or already fully reserved. Individuals who are having trouble accessing or managing the Phase Finder tool are urged to work directly with their healthcare providers or to call 1-800-525-0127, which is the King County COVID Assistance Line for other additional assistance. Now, understandably, the rollout of the state's vaccination program has been frustrating to many, but with hopefully stronger federal support in the upcoming days, greater collaboration and public-private partnerships, and plans to open larger mass vaccination sites should hopefully result in more vaccines being distributed to those who need them most. Now, due to the lack of centralized communication from state and county public health officials, there's also widespread confusion over what may be the role of local jurisdictions and how they should be playing in the establishment of vaccination distribution sites. Now, unfortunately, the selection of where these vaccination sites are and who is eligible to be a vaccination provider is in the hands of state and county officials and not in local jurisdictions. While the county has plans to establish multiple vaccination sites throughout the county, it has not been communicated where or exactly when these sites will be up and running. However, King County is aiming to provide as many vaccinations as possible to already approved providers, and the soon-to-be-established mass vaccination site in Southern King County. Now, while this is unfortunate, it is also subject to change, and that is why we are proactively leaning forward. City of Sammamish has identified potential community points of distribution sites and are revising plans to accommodate the additional COVID-19 vaccine protocols. We have trained volunteers and staff in the operations of such sites, which has already been exercised and practiced during our earlier mass distribution event for COVID. Eastside Fire and Rescue is working tirelessly to ensure that our firefighters and EMTs are trained to administer the COVID-19 vaccine and potentially operate mobile vaccination clinics. We are communicating with partners, neighboring jurisdictions, community stakeholders, and coordinating several times a week with public health officials. When information changes, the city's communication team provides these updates to the public through a well-established outreach strategy that includes social media, email blasts, printed newsletters, and through the regular maintenance of the COVID-19 platform of Connect Sammamish, which is the city's go-to informational hub for the pandemic for the past 11 months. So while there remain roadblocks in the city's ability to establish its own distribution sites, your continued advocacy may open doors to greater vaccine ability to our residents, and our own preparedness will ensure the ability and readiness to complete the mission when that comes. And as with every report, I'll end with a brief update regarding the CARES Act funding that was earmarked for the COVID-19 response and recovery expenses. City has spent roughly $1.9 million of the $2.9 million that was reimbursed to the city. This includes roughly $163,000 on emergency protective measures and other internal COVID-19 expenses, $215,000 on continuity of work and continuity of government supplies through IT, $1,211,000 in 2 rounds of small business grants and nonprofit grants, and roughly $315,000 to support human services organizations that were assisting those impacted by the disaster. With that, I'll address any questions you may have.
Okay, Council. Hold on. Okay, Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Andrew. 2 questions for you. The first question is, can you clarify what multi-generational home means for those over 50? So you stated that people over 65 are eligible and those over the age of 50 in a multi-generational home.
Yes, excellent question, Councilwoman. There is some lack of clarity as far as the state. We were on a call earlier with county officials. However, the intent of that definition is someone who is over 50, yet possibly like a grandmother, grandfather who also lives with a grandchild. And I think the intent is to be 2 to 3 generations under one household. It is not someone who has their own independent household and is just in touch with these family members, but under the same roof.
Great. I was going to say, I thought we had found clarity that it's not like parent-child. It's actually, as you stated, multi-generational would be like 3 generations. And I just wanted to provide clarity for that, since some of us may fall into that category depending on how you define it. The other question I have is, you stated that there's a lack of centralized communication from the state and county officials. What information are you looking for from those channels that you're not getting so that we can help to request that?
Well, an example this evening would be if a site is being added within a jurisdiction, whether it's a pharmacy provider, an urgent care center, or future planning for a mass distribution site, how that is being communicated and exactly to the jurisdiction when that's happening.
Okay, so it's not that the information isn't available. You want the information to be pushed as opposed to you having to pull it.
There's several things, I think. I think understanding some of the future planning processes, what things may change, understanding the scheduling and so forth. So there's a lot of moving pieces. I understand that the county health officials are doing the best they can as well. However, you're seeing different counties rolling out different phases at different times. So I think it's just causing confusion on behalf of residents, and we're doing our best to navigate that.
Understood, and I definitely want to try to help you with that. So focus, since we're here in Sammamish, on King County, is there specific information that you're not getting provided? Yes, plans are changing because I think that the county and the state officials are modifying plans to continue to accelerate the rollout as much as they can. So I think we should all anticipate that the plans will continue to change. So I guess my question is more specific. What are you not getting that you need to be able to clearly communicate that to our residents, which I would agree is very important. But I want us to be able to get some crisp asks, and maybe we can take this offline. But I think it would be good if there's something you're looking for that you're not getting, that we be specific in communicating that back to the county and to the state.
No, I think my primary ask at this time would be future locations of mass distribution sites. I know we'd all like to see one here on the east side. I'd like to see the SOPs for those sites. So if one was under consideration on the east side, that we could ensure that all the jurisdictions and partners involved had the right tools and preparation to be able to comply with those standards.
Okay, great. Let's talk offline and see if we can't get that information then.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is there anybody else who has a question for Andrew? Andrew, you had given a phone number. Could you repeat that phone number for us? It was for, I believe, the health department.
Yes, absolutely. And this number, again, all this information will be provided on the Connect Sammamish site. But the King County COVID assistance line is 1-800-525-0127. And again, I urge all people, if they're having trouble navigating the system, if they're seeing issues with the technical requirements of FaceFinder, reach out directly to your primary care provider, work within your healthcare system, your insurance, and most of those are already tied to one of the hospitals or one of the medical providers already providing vaccines within the county.
Excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, next I have a human services update. Rita, are you?
I'm here, Meg. Good evening,
she
Council, City Council, City Manager. Happy New Year, all. That's right. So, good evening, everyone. My name is Rita Bard, and I'm the Senior Human Services Coordinator, and I'm here tonight to give you all a human services update. As you will recall, staff provided an update a month ago, and since then we've been in touch with providers and have also received 2020 Q4 reporting. And here's what we learned. So the rental moratorium, as I'm sure you're all aware, was due to end on December the 31st, but has now been extended to March 31st. And what we've heard from providers are that residents who are paying rent are anxious because of the job market. Some are out of job. For some of those back at work, the hours have been cut, so they're unable to pay their whole rent. Online schooling is also means many parents are unable to work until their kids are back at school, which is necessitating a need for rental help. On a positive note, since our last meeting, Imagine Housing, which runs a low-income housing complex in the city, was a recipient of funds from the King County Eviction Prevention and Rent Assistance Program, receiving over $95,000 to take care of any outstanding rental delinquency until the end of 2020. At this time, with the rental moratorium ending on March 31st, we simply do not know what, if any, restrictions may be put on landlords by the county or state. And so because of this, it's really difficult to predict both timing and levels of need. Legal and rental assistance providers predict that once the moratorium ends on March 31st, demand for services will increase. The moratorium has not eliminated or diminished their work, rather it's just simply pushed their work down the road. On a more sober note, King County reported from December 27th to January the 9th, there were 42 confirmed overdose deaths. and this is the highest number of overdoses in a 2-week period ever documented in King County. So staff is working with the city's communications department to ensure we have messaging out to the community, providing practical resources and information. Local counsellors are seeing clients with increased severity in mental health concerns and substance use. And parents are also stressed trying to find the best ways to help their children who are having a hard time adjusting to online schooling. LifeWire, the main DV provider on the east side, has seen a huge influx from the need for DV advocacy services and speak to the difficulty of meeting those needs with current staffing. Both corporate and senior providers are working on plans on how to support clients receiving their COVID vaccinations through information and transportation help. Sound Generations, a provider that serves seniors, reports that there's a need for digital connection funding for such things as devices, internet connection, and training seniors on how to use technology. And speaking with homelessness providers, a number of them, they all seem to be running on deficit right now. For instance, the Sophia Way, the main East Side homelessness provider for women, is now running their shelters 24/7, as compared to last year when they were open 12 hours a day. So there are increased staffing costs at running round-the-clock shelters, as well as the stresses of maintaining appropriate COVID-19 protocols. So summing up, providers are seeing a trend from pre-COVID supplementing to now sustaining families in the areas of basic needs. Community partners I've spoken with would like council to know that they're thankful for your support, and staff will continue to monitor needs and will update council at an upcoming meeting. With that, I'm very happy to answer any questions you may have.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, thank you, Rita. So it sounds like, if I can summarize, that the needs are definitely higher, whether it be running longer, additional costs due to protocols, and I think you said that they're now sustaining families as opposed to being in a more augmentation role. Do we have any dollar figures associated with these increased needs yet? And if not, do you know when we might get those?
Yeah, so Mike and I have been chatting, and so I think what we're going to try and do, I think what will happen is, like, nonprofit providers, even though like the end of year is done, they're now like trying to like provide us Q4 reporting, and they're still trying to get their feet on the ground. And so, my hope is to just like connect one-on-one over the phone and have like good long conversations with each of the providers. So as far as like, do I have a dollar amount now? No, I don't. And so again, like, we're getting feedback from them, but we don't actually have a dollar amount to that. But our hope is to connect. Sorry?
I'm sorry, do you know when you might?
Again, with providers, sorry.
Sorry, Rita, I didn't mean to jump in there. We currently have on the agenda.
Yeah, no, go ahead.
We currently have on the agenda a tentative discussion on human services funding recommendations for February 2nd. So we're currently working towards that date. As you heard, Rita's having those conversations one-on-one with each provider to determine kind of what each provider might be asking for, what they might be needing to service Sammamish residents under COVID right now. So we're going to try for the 2nd, but it may be pushed a little bit later.
Okay, great. Thanks, Mike. So I don't know how the rest of the council feels, but I feel like this is a top priority to really be able to get this information and understand what the needs of the community are.
No, I would concur. I think we had this discussion in our committee meeting relative to the grant. So yeah, I agree.
Yep, I don't think anybody would disagree with that. Okay, does anybody else have any questions? Okay, thank you, Rita. It's always lovely to hear your voice.
Thank you. Have a lovely evening, and we'll get that information to you for the next meeting. Thank you. Take care.
Okay, next we have public comment. Pursuant to the Governor's Emergency Proclamation 20-25, the city is unable to provide an in-person location for the public to listen to the virtual city council meeting this evening. Meetings are still accessible to the public, and public comment is able to be submitted. Written public comment will be accepted until 5 p.m. on the day of the meetings. Submit your written comments by email to the city clerk, L. Hatchie, at sammamish.us, and the city council at citycouncil@sammamish.us. Up to 3 minutes of verbal comment may be provided per person live during the meeting. Call the following number and input the access code when prompted by 6:30 p.m. the day of the meeting. The phone number, 1-571-317-3122. Access code, 929-348-197. Do we have any callers this evening?
Yes, Mayor. We currently have 5 people who have called in to provide public comment for tonight. I will unmute callers in the order they have joined the meeting. When it is your turn to speak, you will hear a voice say unmuted. Please indicate if you would like to speak for public comment, public hearing, or for both tonight. I will then put you back on hold, and you will return to council for the public hearing. I will now unmute the first person. Caller number 1, are you calling for public?
I'd like to speak.
Sorry?
Yep, I'm sorry, I'm calling for both.
Okay, thank you. Please give us your name and the...
Good evening, council. This.
Okay.
Yep. Will do. My name is Paul Stickney in Sammamish, and my comment tonight for the public comment section is talking about getting sufficient data on internal housing needs and wants. And from the comment last week, we learned that the 2003 comp plan identified housing shortage gaps of about 890 units for 3 AMI categories from 0 to 100%, which was roughly about 15% of the households in Sammamish in the year 2000. And the surplus and shortage housing gaps for 85% of the households back in 2000 were not known. And I have a slideshow here, so if the first slide could go up with this. What we need to do is evaluate current information on housing need gaps for all economic and all of the demographic groups in Sammamish. It's essential to inform housing policies and numbers to alleviate housing imbalances and enable community enrichments. There's roughly 120 distinctive housing gap numbers to determine based on the economic and demographic makeup of Sammamish. Once all these housing gaps are known, then I recommend the city conduct a statistically valid survey to learn the housing wants and preferences of those living and or working within the community. Slide number 2, please. This is not an onerous amount of information. It's straightforward and clear. In our transportation concurrency that the city has, we know about 43 intersections that have AM and PM counts, both northbound and southbound. That's 160 numbers. Slide number 3, please. We also analyze in our comp plan AM and PM delays, which are another 80 specific numbers. Then please put up slide number 4. Then over and above those 2 sets of data on transportation, if you look at slide number 5, our city scrutinizes over 300 transportation analysis zones too. This rigorous approach serves the community's best interest in transportation and driver experience. However, just as thorough, sufficient information needs to inform housing needs and get surveys as well. Slide number 6 is a repeat of slide 1. My ask is that the city get sufficient housing data that has not been obtained yet in the city of Sammamish, kind of like how the human services needs analysis happened 2 or 3 years ago. This would be catching up a area of the city to get comprehensive needs analysis for the 120 unique individual surplus and shortage housing gaps, and then do surveys. And I'll finish up here. The reason for this is for cohesive growth and to alleviate long-standing housing imbalances. Have a nice evening, and thank you.
I will now unmute caller number 2. Caller number 2, are you speaking for public comment, public hearing, or for both?
I'm calling to offer public comment.
Please state your name and the city that you live in.
Charmin Heron, Seattle. Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Again, my name is Charmin Heron. I work in government relations for King County's Wastewater Treatment Division. Thank you for allowing me time to comment today. I wanted to offer very brief comments from the division as the regional sewer service provider for the city of Sammamish. King County has a sewage disposal contract with Sammamish Plateau Water to provide sewer treatment services. We will meet our contract obligations. King County is required to provide adequate sewer capacity in the regional sewer lines to convey and treat all wastewater flows coming from the district service area. There are no limitations on the amount of flow the county's regional sewer system can accept from Sammamish Plateau's service area at this time. King County's capital plans include a project that would add even more capacity to the regional sewer system. The county's wastewater treatment division is also working with Sammamish Plateau Water to help address capacity constraints in the local sewer system. We will build additional capacity in time to serve the growth in the city when it occurs. The county will work with the district to make local system improvements if needed. Thank you again for the opportunity to comment.
Thank you.
I will now unmute caller number 3. Caller number 3, are you speaking tonight for public comment, public hearing, or for both?
Public comment and public hearing, or for both?
Both, please.
Okay.
I also don't need anything displayed, although I had sent in an email with attachments. My name is Mary Wichter, and I've lived in Sammamish 20 years. Honorable council members, I'm speaking on item 19 tonight, which is on packet pages 138 through 141. It's just 4 pages. And I wanted to let you know that, yes, I do support issue 1. There are indeed administrative and procedural process improvements underway that are desperately needed. A lot of feedback and input and concerns have been given in, and the city staff will create or infuse sustainable site design mindsets so that site planning will be done at the earliest possible stages of development for project conception and design, and we think this will lead to much better success. Also, when there are failures of septic or sewer or insufficient capacity, or if you don't have adequate facilities, that truly is a problem and needs to be avoided. It is also crucial to note that when you're doing site design, you need to do things even if you don't have a drainage review required, because they need to happen even if there's small things going on. And the second part of that issue 1, there does need to be adequate and fully sufficient work done. So this is time to mention any concerns that you have that have not been captured by staff or with the ongoing work.
I think it's really important to educate people early. An ounce of prevention is worth a pound, and even literally tons of cure, in addition to tens and hundreds of thousands of dollars of that would not be lost or ending up with multiple foreclosures and projects sitting. Some of the positive effects that will result from the staff work plan and focus is that will stop too many large trees from being removed or their roots being cut and exposed, plus disturbances in areas around their drip line before these problems occur on a site. It would allow preventing clearing when there isn't any permit for how to landscape or restore the area, plus to ensure vegetation includes native plants and it looks at the location, soil, slopes, and suitable types. It would also avoid the city having to collect fines and penalties and officially record code violations for overgrading, which leaves huge cut banks that are not stabilized, creating groundwater seepage, which are almost impossible to address. And it's better for the applicant because it's less costly for the owner, better for the work site and developer, less impacts to neighbors, the community area, and leads to more success and less stress on the environment. Then the last part of issue number one, yes, I support and I hope the council will also support for amending the city's municipal code to restrict use of drainage assessments in critical areas. You should restrict changes that are done late in the process because if you don't do them early, you might not be able to do low impact development or other things. Also, you should declare the intent of the request and an adjustment as part of your land use entitlement. And then if something comes up later, you can submit that, but then it would be subject to stringent review and also public comment, and it's better to do in the beginning. I also did send in a lot of information, just educational and critical drainage areas. So anyway, I did send in a long email. I hope you will look at it. We do not want to add more new things other than the Lewis Thompson Road tight line is a CIP that needs to be added to the 6-year stormwater list and funding so grants can be looked at. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now unmute caller number 4. Caller number 4, are you speaking for public comment?
Hi, yes.
For the public hearing or for both?
For both.
Okay.
My name is Aurora Merchant, and I live here in Sammamish. And I was actually calling in on a couple of different issues in this, and the last caller actually touched on a few of them, and this has to do with the low impact development and stormwater management, and how that is affecting currently what's going on in the Conservancy zone, which still is zoned as R4. I have not been contacted by the individuals that both Mayor Moran and Deputy Mayor Christy Malcho sent out as people that should be would be reaching out to me. I did work with Avril, and she's been trying to tell me asking me what the city should do to better improve the programs. But the problem is that there are two different things. There's a land use permit, which you gain the right to use the land use, and then it's submitted to the DOE. And that is approved, but it's still managed, and the responsibility of the city is managed to actually implement that permit. And then there is a building permit. Those two permits are not connected for reasons I cannot understand or explain, and neither can she. We've been talking about this now for over a month on trying to work out how possibly to address some of these issues, because right now our dock, for the second year in a row after it being built in 2007, has been underwater for 2 years. Those after 4 lots consecutively were approved in the Conservancy zone, which is all supposed to be low impact, with massive houses and retaining walls that were against the land use permits, but allowed in the building permits, allowed to build outside of what the land use permits constricted them to in the conditions that were actually conditioned by the city of Sammamish planners said would actually improve it, prove the actual ecology of the shoreline, but at the same time built concrete walls into the ground, preventing any water from actually flowing to the lake, removing more than 70% of vegetated land, of vegetation on those lands. Our dock now today is the first day in 2 weeks it's not been underwater, as are the docks that neighbor all of us to the south. that shows me that the water table has changed because of the massive importation of dirt and the fact that they can't even contain that with the TESC measures, because those measures, literally the owner of the Fairwell parcel, 202-506-9071, next to us, is literally pumping water out of his site. And I have photographs I can send in. I just did not have a chance to before the meeting. Pumping the water out because he cannot keep the water even in his site because he's digging into water on top of the fact that it's in a flood zone. They're trying to add an import stand in. And the same thing with the parcel next to him. They are nowhere near the constraints that were applied by the city or by the city council.
Okay.
My final comment is, I know that I'm running out of much time. Ms. Moran, I apologize. I know this. I just want to say the major point. I know that you guys are a policy setting body, but at the same time, if they are allowed to break every policy you make, then what is the point of making the policy?
Okay, thank you.
I will now unmute caller number 5. Caller number 5, are you speaking for public comment, public hearing, or for both?
Public comment.
Okay. Please state your name and the city that you live in.
Oh. Yeah, okay. I'm Doug Topp. I live in Bellevue, and I own the Sammamish property. I'm making some comments on behalf of a handful of people trying to build their homes. I want to address people who spend an unusual amount of time going out of their way to stop other people from their right to build their homes. These people continue to highlight the dangers of steep slope, drainage, etc. And the best I can tell is they're using fear-mongering rhetoric rather than having technical expertise on the subject. I want to say, as a mechanical engineer and somebody with extensive construction experience, this is a very disingenuous narrative. These people, from a technical perspective, does not know what they're talking about. In addition, I think these rants are harmful in numerous ways. Aside from false premise, it unfairly scares people. The worst part is that these narratives insinuates that David Pyle and his technical team do not know what their job and their expertise is, and that they can't keep the community safe. We, on the other hand, have worked with these people and the city experts, and that is simply not the case. We find that these employees are good at code enforcement, safety procedures, methodologies, and we've been duly impressed, and I might say painfully impressed, because we're being pressed the letter of the law on every one of these: stormwater drainage, retaining, geotech, you name it. The processes, the codes are rigorous. We're being in compliance. And so, when I hear these things and these statements, I think they're just horrible insinuations. And in my opinion, I think they should stop. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, that is all the public comment we have for tonight.
Okay, I think that leaves us with 3 that we will see back here for the hearings. Correct? All right. Okay, next we have executive session, and it is for litigation and potential litigation pursuant to RCW 42.30.110(1)I and collective bargaining pursuant to RCW 42.30.140(4)A. They've got it down for 25 minutes. It's going to be an hour. Okay, it's going to be an hour. Okay, so let's do this. So let's say 40 minutes. We can always extend it if we need. Okay, so let's do this. It's 7:20. Let's say 8 o'clock, and we'll extend if we need. Okay, council members, we'll see you on the other side. We will be extending our executive session from 8 o'clock till 8:20. Again, extending executive session from 8 o'clock till 8:20. Thank you. Again, this is the January 19th, 2021. And we're going to extend executive session. It is now 8:20. We will be extending for another half an hour. So again, it's now 8:20 and extending for 30 minutes. Thank you.
There he is.
Okay. Jason is with us.
So can I make a motion?
Absolutely.
Great, thank you. I move that we authorize the city manager to sign a voluntary payment to the city of Sammamish for the King County Aldera subdivision from Tassanite LLC.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Excellent.
Nay.
Oh, one nay. So that would be a 6-1. Okay, next up we have got our consent calendar. Looking for a motion for the consent calendar.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a first by Councilmember Treen, second, I believe that was from Deputy Mayor.
Yes.
Okay, any discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving the consent calendar, say aye. Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. Consent calendar is approved. Next, we have proclamations. We have two. First one that we have up is for Black History Month for February. Councilmember Ross, would you like to read that?
I'd be happy to. It's getting on my screen. Just give me a moment. Slow down, excuse me.
I can't get mine to load either, Councilmember Ross.
Yeah, let's hope it. Try one more time. I reloaded it. Experiencing a problem?
I have it if you need it.
If you can share it, or
Why don't you just have Councilmember Greenland read it?
or go ahead. Go ahead and.
Okay,
I
Councilmember
apologize. I
Gamblin,
really
if
can't
you've got it
vote
up on the screen, do you want to go ahead and read it?
Sorry to steal your thunder there, Councilmember Ross.
Well, thank you for jumping in.
Just want to move it along. Okay, this is a proclamation recognizing and honoring February 2021 as Black History Month. The city of Sammamish is committed to honoring diversity, equity, inclusion, and mutual respect as the fundamental principles of Black History Month and the core values of our community. And whereas Black History Week was initiated February 12, 1926, to highlight the contributions and accomplishments made by the Black community that had been omitted from history, and whereas in 1976, as part of the nation's bicentennial, Black History Week was expanded and established as Black History Month. And whereas the city of Sammamish is proud to honor the history, contributions, and achievements of the Black community locally
nationally and globally, and whereas the contribution and presence of the Black community is recognized as enhancing the quality of life in the city of Sammamish, and whereas Black History Month calls our community to take pause to reflect on the past injustices inflicted on the Black community and to pay tribute to the battles fought in the name of equality. And whereas Black History Month calls our community's attention to modern day racism, biases, and prejudices that have negatively impacted the livelihood of the Black community. And whereas Black History Month is a time for our community to look to the future to ensure inclusiveness and equality for all. And whereas the national theme for Black History Month in 2021 is the Black family, restoration, identity, and diversity. And whereas the city of Sammamish will dedicate the month of February to offering Black history informational resources on the city's Equity, Diversity, and Inclusion webpage. And now, therefore, our Mayor Karen Moran of the city of Sammamish, Washington, does hereby proclaim February 2021 as Black History Month. Thanks.
Thank you, Council Member. The next is for proclamation of Sammamish School Choice Week. Deputy Mayor.
Unfortunately, I have the exact same problem that Councilmember Ross does, and it will not load.
Oh.
I can't read it.
Okay, and Councilmember Ross, can you get yours up on your screen yet?
Nope, I've been trying even a different device. No luck.
Okay, I'm going to keep looking at people that have my screen here. Councilmember Train.
Proclamation of National School Choice Week. Whereas all children in Sammamish should have access to the highest quality education possible, and whereas Sammamish recognizes the important role that an effective education plays in preparing all students in Sammamish to be successful adults, and whereas quality education is critically important to the economic vitality of Sammamish, and whereas Sammamish is home to a multitude of high-quality public and non-public schools from which parents can choose for their children, in addition to families who educate their children in the home, and whereas educational variety not only helps to diversify our economy, but also enhances the vibrance of our community, and whereas Sammamish has many high-quality teaching professionals in all types of school settings who are committed to educating our children, and whereas School Choice Week is celebrated across the country by millions of students, parents, educators, schools, and organizations to raise awareness of the need for effective educational options. Now, therefore, I and the Mayor, Karen Moran, on behalf of the city of Sammamish, do hereby recognize January 24th through January 30th, 2021 as National School Choice Week in Sammamish, and I call this observance to the attention of all our citizens.
Thank you, Counselor. Both these are wonderful proclamations, and my kids went to choice schools, so I'm a big advocate. Okay, next up, we have got the public hearings.
Madam Mayor?
Yes.
I'm sorry, really quickly, could I just ask, so happy to support all sorts of education. I just wanted to point out that this is School Board Appreciation Month, and that going forward, it might be really awesome if we could recognize American Education Week, which pays tribute especially to our public schools, since the majority of our kids do go to our public schools. So if that's something we could just ask the staff to get those onto our calendar in future years, that would be awesome.
Okay, she's writing it down, but send an email to Lita so she makes sure she puts it on the calendar.
Wonderful, thank you.
Yep. Okay, next up is our public hearings, and this, I believe we're going to go to Mr. Pyle?
Yes, Mayor. David Pyle, Community Development. The next item on tonight's agenda is the continuation of the public hearing regarding the current moratorium. The action that's in front of the council tonight is to consider closing the public hearing and consider taking action as to whether the council will choose to renew the moratorium or modify and renew the moratorium. With that, I'll turn it over to you, Mayor. I believe that there is potentially still some members of the audience who would like to make public comment on this. And at that point, then it would be appropriate to close the public hearing.
Great. I know we have some people that have been kind enough to wait very long. So let's go to our callers that have waited on the phone.
Excuse me, Mary. Yes, I currently have 3 people who have called in to provide public hearing comment tonight. I will unmute the callers in the order they have joined. And when it's your turn, please, when you hear an unmuted voice, say unmuted, automated voice, the unmuted, then you will have 3 minutes to provide public comment. I will unmute the first caller. Caller number 1, please state your name and the city that you live in for the record.
Hello, my name is Mary Wichter, and I live in the city of Sammamish for 20 years. Honorable council members and respected city management and staff, I ask you to renew the moratorium for at least another 6 months using option 1 tonight before it expires. During the first reading and the public hearing on January 5th, the deputy mayor had asked about the just 8 or 13 numbers, and David Pyle had verbally said there might be up to 30 single-family resident permits that might come forward under option 2 if new houses on existing parcels were allowed. The numbers in the city packet are that there's 890 lots for single-family homes, and I believe those do not include erosion areas by the notations on that page. Also, the Englewood 1889 plat has over 150 vacant lots as per the King County assessor and map data shows, and Tamarack has over 40 vacant lots, and there are still 7 projects that are trying to build that have been approved. In addition, there are 40 lots that have built in Tamarack, and on the first public comment for the first reading night on January 5th, I went through the status on those. They do have troubles. There are 1 or more lots that have also had multiple foreclosures, and we are seeing issues. This is not due to any sort of staff problem. Director David Pyle is masterful, extremely experienced and responsive, as are his staff and others at the city. But the city does agree with the development regulations phase 2, and that project should address many of the issues and concerns with individual lots building on single-family residences that are not in short plats or subdivisions. This will help not only the city, but the builders, developers, and future owners, as well as reduce the impact to the neighbors and those in the area. David Pyle, as city staff and director of community development, also admitted that the city isn't really good at identifying the landslide hazard areas, and I do know that there was a recent landslide that has been reported to the city in the area where a U approval was remanded back to the city from the hearing examiner. Also, for the Growth Management Hearing Board, there are 2 categories that must be identified and protected by jurisdictions: those with functions and values such as streams and wetlands, and critical areas where there are risks to life and property. These include erosion, landslide, and seismic hazards, which are known under the Growth Management Act as geologically hazardous areas. Tonight, for stormwater and low-impact development, I had separately mailed information and referred to critical drainage areas where low-impact development is not supposed to be used, as it should be infeasible, and development regulations phase 2 must consider if it is really sane to put septic systems on or near slopes in landslide and erosion hazard areas, and how that interplays with tree retention areas as well on smaller lots. Englewood and Tamarack do not have adequate facilities for sewer and storm, and Sammamish Plateau Water is considering maybe a 90 90-day moratorium. They're talking about it in February while the sewer capacity is studied. I ask that you keep the current moratorium for 6 months. Otherwise, you will be trying to have lots in Inglewood and Tamarack do septic on steep slopes, which should be infeasible like Lid. Thank you.
Thank you.
I will now unmute the next caller. Caller number 2, please state your name.
Good evening. All right, my name is Paul Stickney. Good evening. I have another slide presentation here. I'm in support of continuing the moratorium. If the city either puts a pause to the EIS and changes focus to determine cohesive community growth aims, or adds an alternative to the EIS to consider optimizing growth. The real issue is cohesively managing growth and land use in our community. And it's time to move from being driven by pretty intense emotions to constrain all growth, and move to be driven by intense emotions to right-size all growth, to completely different things. The growth past of councils over the last 18 years or so has been to minimize growth relative to what was allowed by King County and what the needs and wants are in our community. The growth aims of the current council majority appear by actions taken and a lot of study appear to be significantly lower than the currently adopted comp plan. Both of these are erroneous in that these decisions are based on the wrong set of emotions. More on that in just a second. Next slide, please. I have here a Seahawk mitt, and it's too bad the Seahawks did not win. But just think that I am just gently touching each of you on your heads and just saying, wake up. There's time for a paradigm shift in collective community and city council thinking to get sufficient information and contrast optimize growth. How? Please turn to my next slide. It's time to reassess all growth decisions in Sammamish from the right side, and it's right both in literal, figurative, and literally, from the accurate side of the thick black line. Council decisions on growth have been based on insufficient information and less than wholly informed opinions. Time to stop all that. It's time to level set all three growth approaches with common information. Change to the next slide, please. And get back to the three-way teeter-totter here, which way to tip on growth. And I tell you, it was hard as heck to find a graphic of a three-way teeter. Very challenging. But in the middle is information. That's what's missing from all the growth approaches. So we need to inform, alter, and improve. The goal is to right-size housing supplies for the community to do three things: to alleviate imbalances in the community, to add assets that have appropriate benefits for all parties involved. And I got that done in just under 3 minutes.
Yes, you did. Good timing. Might have been better with a Packer hat or something in there, but thank you.
No.
I will now unmute caller number 3. Caller number 3, please state your name and the city that you live in.
Yes, my name is Aurora My name is Aurora Merchant, and I live in the city of Sammamish. And I'm calling in regards to the building moratorium, as well as there's an incorrect assumption that was presented as to what buildable parcels and unbuildable parcels are. When pulling from the tax data base, if you will, from the tax assessor's office, they mentioned parcels that are anything that's labeled R1 or through R8 is considered residential and therefore buildable. And you will actually see this in a recent shoreline decision that was delineated on one of the shoreline parcels. That they decide that it is residential if you guys zone it as residential, and if it's not, the zoning is not changed, and it says R4, even if it's only 600 feet. 600 square feet total, then that is still deemed as buildable. The reason that this is very concerning, especially to somebody like me that lives above a parcel that is 14 acres, that has marked as landslide, but still zoned as R4. So despite the presentation that landslide should deem it as unbuildable, it's still zoned as R4, and therefore it will still be allowed to be built on. The fact that the parcel was granted the right to be built upon when on the shoreline properties that I gave examples of that were in the conservancy zone that contained every one of the things that were mentioned as making them unbuildable parcels should concern every owner, because that makes it mean that what is the determination of non-buildable really to the actual planners that are currently in place since 2016. And I say this in example, specific examples are the properties that were purchased by the Eastmans that also own CLM Holdings. They purchased parcels 202-506-9048, vacant unbuildable. They also purchased 202-506-9091, vacant unbuildable. 202-506-906, vacant unbuildable. 192-506-9117, vacant unbuildable. 192-506-9084, vacant unbuildable. 192-506-9097, vacant unbuildable. Parcel number 192-5506-913, vacant unbuildable. Parcel, all of those parcels are only unbuildable unless variances are granted. Just as the parcels in the conservancy zone were deemed unbuildable until they were granted variances, even against the Sammamish Municipal Code. The code stated that if they had been denied by a prior permit review for the same thing, they should never have been granted the right to build. They were granted the right to build, and they were never held to those constraints. That's why I'm concerned, because one of those is a 14-acre parcel that literally there is a landslide where my house stands today in 1996. Over 20-foot landslide that I can prove and show to everybody on council that occurred in 1996 and was actually recorded by the DDES under King County.
I'm going to have you finish.
And my concern is that I'll wrap it up, and I apologize. My point is what is really determined to be unbuildable by the city manager and his team, because if these things are the final parcels, and I apologize, the final parcel, the 202-506-9009
have you finish.
Has an agreement. Has an agreement that says has an agreement recorded against the parcel that says
That concludes our public hearing comment for tonight.
Okay, thank you. Our city manager, Dave, I know you're up there in the cloud somewhere. If we can get somebody to get back in touch with her, and has somebody been in touch with her?
There's more to this than.
Yeah.
We have. David Pyle has spent many meetings with her, but David and I will talk about it. We'll get back to her.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, so the next step then is for the council to look at the two options. So I'm going to go back to Mr. Pyle. Would you like to walk the council through the two options that are available that you have down?
Sure, Mayor. David Pyle, Community Development. The first option would be a renewal, a moratorium renewal that would take place 5 days following its passage, so on the 24th, I believe, next Monday, and it would be good for 6 months. The other option, and that would be a prohibition for new applications for concurrency certificate, with an exception for public facilities such as schools. The exhibit number 2, option number 2, is an alternative that has the same timeline attached to it, but that would allow for 3 exceptions. The first exception would be consistent with the past moratorium for public facilities. The second exception would be for new single-family homes on existing vacant lots that have not been recently platted. And then the third exception would be for new accessory dwelling units associated with existing single-family homes or newly built under construction single-family homes on existing vacant lots. Are there questions about that?
Okay, before we get into questions, I'm going to close the public hearing. So at this time, we are going to close the public hearing. I don't have a hammer, so that's going to have to work. And then we can go into discussion and questions from council. Okay, and I'm yes, Pam, I saw your comment. Okay, so first one up, I believe, is Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. David, I wanted to get clarification on the number of lots. Our packet still kind of references that 8 to 13, and I think when I asked last time, you said it might be closer to 30. But we did have a resident that emailed council with public comment that referenced mybuildingpermit.com specifically, and that there were at least 20 lots that were in the process somehow with the city in Inglewood alone. I just kind of wanted to get some verification on that number of about 20 in Inglewood alone, and then kind of marry that up with the 30 that you had mentioned during when we first opened this public hearing, if we think that's an accurate number.
So, my first response and reaction is that the term accurate number is one that is really complex. There are a lot of factors that go into whether or not someone will pursue development on a parcel. The buildability of the parcel, the complexity of construction, the cost of construction, the market, what the purpose of their development is. There's a whole host of factors that go into it. So, we have a hard time trying to guess what will come in the door. We presented some data from our system that identified how many individual one-off single-family homes we typically see in a year. But we also understand that because the door has been closed to development for a short period of time here, that there is somewhat of a pent-up demand, so to speak. So we may see something that is a little atypical to those numbers that were provided. And we also understand that timing is important, because we might receive an influx of requests for concurrency certificate for single-family home, but those concurrency certificates are only good for 180 days. And it's oftentimes the case that applicants might apply for concurrency, it might expire, there There might be other scenarios where someone sells the property, but they don't, the new owner doesn't take action on it and it expires. That's how we landed. That's how I landed at 30. Was given the time frame that we're confronted with, and given the amount of work that it takes to bring one of these parcels, especially in Inglewood, to permit, to actually bring it to the point where it's ready to make permit application. And we'll be talking about this as the next item on your agenda tonight. There's quite a bit of work that goes into bringing a project to the point where it is ready to make application for new single-family building permit. Because there are people asking about lots in the project guidance phase, or asking about lots through the pre-development services phase, or coming in for pre-application, does not necessarily mean that they are going to make application for concurrency certificate or subsequent building permit. We see speculation all the time. Stuff's on the market. Someone wants to find out about it. They're going to submit a project guidance. Now that the city is tracking, so in the past, the city had not tracked all of its correspondence and all of its dialogue with customers at the counter or over email or whatever means they were communicating. We now require that anybody who wants information about a piece of property submits an application for project guidance. And what that's done is it's increased the number of files that you'll find in the system, but it's also provided for clearer information on what the city has actually told property owners. So I think there's some of that going on here, where we actually have more speculation occurring. But if, based on my experience and based on looking at the numbers of the past, 13 being the high number, and looking at what we know it is really true to the permit process, I would find it a hard stretch to reach 30. Now, I'm going out on a limb saying that. It's a little scary to say that, because if we were confronted with 45 or something, then I would have been wrong. But again, I really have no way of knowing what's really going to come of this going forward. And I want to be really clear about that, because I don't want it to be taken away that, oh, he said 30 and now we have 45, because it's really tricky to forecast what could happen here.
That's fair, and I didn't mean to paint you into a corner by answering that question. I think I was trying to ascertain the validity of the 20, but I think your explanation does provide some clarity that just because someone is inquiring about it doesn't mean it's going to get built, certainly within the time frame that we're looking at. So thank you. I appreciate your comments.
We actually might receive 10 inquiries on one parcel that happens to be hot on the market in the moment, and I don't know if that's being perceived as 10 potential lots that could be built on, but it's really only related to one lot, but there's 10 records attached to it.
Here, Councilmember Stewart, and they're next.
Okay, so next question I have, I believe, is Christy, is that you? Or okay, Councilmember Stewart.
No, it's Councilmember Stewart. I just meant.
Yep.
Great, thank you. David, just for the benefit of the public, I know that the agenda bill has a bit of background, but I'm not sure that everyone at home would completely follow along with the description there. Can you just describe for people a little bit about what's happened? Because there's been a bit of a shift in when the first moratorium was implemented and where we are now. And I think it's important also to explain the current endeavor, because it's called Balanced Land Use and Mobility. But just to clarify again for the public, because one of the callers talks about balanced land use, and I'm not sure that the same term is being used to mean exactly the same thing in both of these places. So could you provide just a little bit of background of sort of what started the moratorium, when it started this time around, and where we are now, because it was presented that there are two options, and I think in the agenda bill, there's really three options. There's don't extend the moratorium, and then there is extend it, or there's extend it with some menu or of exceptions to it.
Yeah, so the background, as stated in the agenda bill for this evening and at the prior meeting, outlines the history behind how the first moratorium on this topic came to be. And generally speaking, the moratorium was put in place to maintain the status quo, if you will, while the city worked out its different options in moving forward and responding to the Growth Management Hearings Board decision related to a filing that they were confronted with ruling on. And in passing a moratorium, the council and the city's interest was that we have time to be able to properly perform environmental analysis regarding different tools we have to manage transportation systems in the city with regard to how they correspond and relate to land use patterns. And to ensure that as we go forward and as we invest in transportation infrastructure, that those investments are first of all, are funded in a way that is sustainable. And number two, that we are also investing in the right pieces of infrastructure in the right place. The easy way to say it, albeit somewhat rudimentary, is the tail wagging the dog, meaning are we actually looking at where our land uses are and where our capacity is in our systems in order to ensure that we're making the right investments, or are we simply following what a model is telling us as to where those investments should go? And the model may not always know where the investment should go given other factors. So we are opening up the door to consideration of those other factors. And ultimately that will result in a presentation of potential impacts for council consideration in deciding how to invest in transportation infrastructure, how to manage transportation systems, et cetera, going forward.
Okay, I'm not sure that totally, it was a great explanation, thank you. I'm not sure that to the layperson that still totally made sense. So I just want to make sure that the public is following along. We had a Growth Management Hearing Board decision that invalidated our part of our concurrency model. Because that was invalidated, we implemented an emergency moratorium last, when was that? When was the first moratorium implemented? Because we had one prior to the July date, correct?
That's correct. And those dates are outlined in the agenda bill. And it was on the one that is currently in place was adopted on July 28th of 2020 under ordinance number 2020-508.
Right. We initially put in a moratorium on April 21st, it looks like. So we implemented a moratorium. At some point over the summer, the staff and the city manager decided that we were no longer going to argue against the Growth Management Hearing Board remand, and that we were going to accept the invalidation of that concurrency model. But we have, in fact, kept the moratorium in place and extended it.
We are supposed to be talking about the moratorium options, and now we're going into other topics.
I'm sorry, Councilmember Ross, I'm actually not trying to. I just want to make sure that the public understands this, because it's really...
The mayor needs to rule on the point of order before we continue.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, you need to rule on the point of order.
Okay, well, I didn't hear, I only heard part of it. It's really muffled. So I heard Councilmember Ross. I did not hear what you said.
Nope, you just get to listen to what Councilmember Ross says.
Okay, So,
And then you need a rule on the point of order.
Okay, so Councilmember Ross is correct. Let's stick to the point of speaking on the moratorium.
Okay, well, then I have a question. So the current effort that's underway that is using this moratorium to maintain the status quo is being called sorry, I'm trying to find it in the agenda bill really quickly. The balanced, sorry, David, I scrolled past it now. I can't find it again.
Balanced land use and mobility analysis.
Okay, so the balanced land use and mobility analysis. So in that balanced land use and mobility analysis, have we done what Mr. Stickney has been requesting, which is have we determined? Well, it's relevant.
We are now discussing, can I be recognized for my point of order, please?
Yes. Who said point of order?
State your point.
Who is it? State your point. And who is it?
Yeah.
Councilmember Gamblin.
Okay.
This is Councilmember Gamblin. So we're supposed to be discussing our options for the moratorium, and now Councilmember Stewart is having us discuss a random public comment from one of the members, one of our residents, that has nothing to do with this at all.
Okay, let's stick to the moratorium.
So, but Madam Mayor, my question is relevant because I'm trying to understand why we need the moratorium. And my understanding is that we need the moratorium because of this effort. So if Councilmember Gamblin is saying that we don't need the moratorium to complete that effort, then I'm guessing we don't need the moratorium at all. So if the moratorium is in support of that effort, then my question is on point.
I think your question needs to be directed to Mr. Pyle. If you have a question as to whether we need a moratorium, then that is your question, and that's to David Pyle.
My question has been to David Pyle. I just haven't been allowed to finish my question. May I finish my question?
You can finish your question, but we're not bringing in...
You need a rule on the point of order.
I did rule on the point of order. The point of order was, yes, we're not bringing in, we're not bringing in different, and I don't know the wording that he used, but different theories from different people or whatever it was he used. We're not bringing that into this because there is housing that he said was worked into the plan.
We should not consider public comment for this, is what you're saying, from the public hearing.
Well, if you want to consider one public comment, then you would have to consider everybody's public comment, and everybody would have their own name to it. So we're going to go with what the city is looking for. If your comments are related to what the city has asked for in the plan, then that is the comment that you can ask on.
Well, that's what I'm trying to get clarification. I was trying to ask David Pyle for clarification. If in the balanced land use and mobility plan, if we have conducted a citywide housing analysis to determine what the housing needs are of the current residents, to understand what the balanced housing needs are. And that's what I wanted to get my question answered.
If I can assist David Pyle on that particular issue, the housing isn't the main focus here of this moratorium and this EIS. Although the housing is a component, it is not the primary focus of it, and data is being gathered for it, but the comprehensive plan and the update to that will take a more comprehensive view of all of the housing analysis. A complete housing analysis is not necessarily required at this point in the EIS process.
So can you clarify then what the name of the EIS effort means then when it speaks of balanced I'm sorry, I still can't find it in the bloody.
The balanced land use is
Okay.
encompassing zoning issues, traffic issues, the capacity of the land, and I'm sure David could add on to that.
Yeah. It specifically is looking at the relationship between land use patterns and trip generations. So depending on where the different trip generations are will result in different needs for transportation infrastructure. To be clear, impacts to housing, transportation, land use, the natural environment, other elements of the environment resulting from alternatives to achieve the objectives will all be part of the analysis. Each of these elements will become their own chapter in the EIS. And with your specific question with respect to housing, the EIS will analyze the impact on the city's ability to provide adequate housing to meet future needs. However, it will not necessarily get into housing affordability and housing alternatives and options. So just to be clear, it is focused on the relationship between land use patterns and the city's transportation system.
Okay, so when you say it will assess future housing needs, if it's not looking at like diversity of housing or affordability, what does it mean when you say housing needs?
Unit numbers with relationship to the King County countywide planning policies and the city's housing target.
Okay, so it's just a number. It's not the type of housing. It's just a number.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, David. That was very clarifying. I appreciate that. So it's looking at how we meet a number of housing and the balance between our infrastructure to meet that, or what infrastructure changes we would have to make to meet that.
That's correct.
Okay, great. All right, that was very clarifying, and to the mayor's point, I think it is important that we do, in fact, consider all of the public comments that we have received on this topic and trying to understand if, in fact, we do need a moratorium, to what end. And just, again, to clarify for the public that this is a moratorium on concurrency certificate issuance, not on issuing building permits, but if this moratorium goes on for, I think, David, you mentioned it, for 180 days, then there would no longer be any permits that had valid concurrency certificates left. Is that true? Well, there would still be some in the pipeline, correct, that had already vested, but there would be no new permits that could be issued, correct?
Yes, to be clear, if the council was to choose option 2 and was to choose to allow exception for new single-family home on existing vacant lot, or ADU, what then would happen is that would enable an applicant to come in the door and file for application or request for concurrency certificate. Then the city would go about following Title 14A and the rules regarding processing of concurrency certificates. We would potentially, if possible, approve the concurrency certificate if it passes, at which point that approved concurrency certificate would have a shelf life of 180 days. An applicant would then be enabled to, with the other items that are required, file for new single-family building permit, at which point they would then, once their application was deemed complete and the permit processing fee was paid, be deemed complete, at which point they would become vested and the concurrency certificate would run with the building permit for the life of the building permit.
Okay, and looking backward,
Council, we need to extend.
I hate to interrupt you, but I need to move to extend. So I move to extend to 11 p.m.
Okay, do we have a second?
Second.
Okay, we have a first from Deputy Mayor, a second from Councilmember Gamblin. All those in favor to extending till 11 p.m., say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Aye. I guess that's
my last question, I promise, David. So if we were to extend this concurrency certificate issuance moratorium again, we would then hit that 180-day mark, which means that only people who had a vested permit would be able to move forward. There wouldn't be anybody who potentially had a concurrency certificate that could still file for an application. Is that correct?
Well, if alternative 2 is chosen and new single family on vacant lots was allowed, that would continue for the next 6 months. So it would be on a rolling scale. And what would happen is whenever you filed and then subsequently received your concurrency certificate, it would be valid for 180 days. So depending on when it was issued, it would really govern how many actually had and were holding a valid concurrency certificate at that point down the line.
Excellent. Thank you, David. Appreciate it.
Okay. Next, we have got Deputy Mayor.
Thanks. I actually wanted to offer a motion here that we renew our moratorium with option 2, which does give public agencies, as defined in SMC 21A.15.915, and single-family residences on existing lots and accessory dwelling units.
I second that. I second it.
Okay, we've got a motion to move forward, SMC 21A.15.915. We've got a second from Councilmember Ross. Discussion? Okay, I see Jason, Councilmember Ritchie, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor, and I appreciate the motion. Just for clarity's sake, this is option 1, is that correct?
Option 2?
No, this is option 2.
Oh.
Nope, this is option 2. Yeah, when the mayor reread it back, she did not say the second part of it.
Okay, I appreciate that. So my concern about the motion is that I'll just start off by saying I don't support the moratorium. I don't think there's an emergency in place to support the moratorium. We have the functioning traffic model in place, the concurrency model in place, the intersection level of service that the administrative court in Jern case has blessed is appropriate. They've left us with something in place. There's no moratorium needed in an emergency sense because we have that in place. To continue with the moratorium puts us at litigation risk, and I think that's really important to consider that. If we can lift the moratorium, we can move forward, we can oppose this motion with all due respect, allow managed growth in our city, and simultaneously work on other options, including the EIS and the land use traffic pattern study, to improve our traffic miles going forward. We don't need a moratorium in place to do that and to continue that work. I'll add here that because this motion does include the single-family homes, I oppose it simply overarchingly because it creates winners and losers. It's not the job of local government to create that winners and losers scenario. I think it opens us up again to significant litigation risk, and I think we need to be cognizant of that. Exempting single-family homes from the moratorium, in my mind at least, or at least allows them to move forward, and not other types of homes or residences like multifamily homes. By doing so, we're exacerbating or we're furthering the imbalance that already exists we have in Sammamish already. We have a housing shortage across the region, and this moratorium doesn't help to mitigate or help to solve or better manage that shortage. It doesn't create opportunities for seniors, young buyers, renters to live in our city. I guess at the end of the day, I'd ask my fellow council members to really carefully consider the legal ramifications of this vote. I'm concerned about it. I think it's a serious concern we need to consider as we go forward here. We've been told not to speak about the legal ramifications on the dais. I don't think that's right to do. I think we should be cognizant of it. I think it's important that the public know that. And I fear for our city as we continue to move forward with moratorium after moratorium for 3 years without good cause when we have a functioning traffic model in place. And we do face significant legal damages if we're wrong. I think it's important that our council members, my fellow council members, all of us, reflect on our actions and consider options that protect our residents and our assets rather than potentially putting those things at legal risk and jeopardy. Thank you.
Okay, is there any other comments that anybody would like to add to that? Okay, well, I'm going to add one. I would disagree with Councilmember Ritchie. We do not have a functioning traffic. We do not have a way to measure two of our roads on the north end. We have East Lake Sammamish Parkway and 244th that don't have intersections, so we don't have a way to count anything on those roadways. The GMA requires us to count the cars on those roadways, and we do not have a way to do so. So no, we do not have a good way to count the traffic on those roads. So no, we do not have a legitimate plan to do that. I will be voting for option 2. I do think that we need to move forward. I think the goal should be to get out of a moratorium. The fact that people own lots, they should be able to build on their lots. I think this gets us where we're going. Okay, I'm seeing people now wanting to voice their opinion. So let's go to Councilmember Gamblin.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. You brought up the point perfectly, is that we don't have a functioning way to measure the traffic on some of the roads in the city. And as per the GMA, we were supposed to have a way of looking and seeing what the effect of further development will have on those roads. People drive those roads every day. We need a way to measure that. So I'll be supporting the Deputy Mayor's motion.
Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, a couple of clarifying questions. So I'm a little bit confused because I thought that the purpose of the moratorium was to maintain the status quo, but this would exempt certain development, so we wouldn't be maintaining the status quo, and it would, in fact, potentially add additional cars to those roads. So I don't know if the Deputy Mayor wanted to speak to her motion, or someone could clarify for me what the goal of any moratorium would be at this point in time.
Stability or work plan.
Deputy Mayor, did you want to answer to that?
Yeah, I mean, I can just simply say that's why I was, for lack of a better term, grilling David Pyle over the last course of these 2 meetings about what we were talking about in terms of potential applications that would come in. The reality of not having a V over C in place, and that is something the city has always had. I think we get a lot of comments and we forget the fact that the city's concurrency standard always included level of service at intersections and a volume over capacity ratio. We do not have a V over C in place, and as has been pointed out, we have some naked roadways that don't have any intersections to measure traffic on, and they both happen to be on the north end of the plateau. So when I asked David about how many, I was trying to gauge the impact. And while I appreciate David's estimation of what that impact could be, it is fairly minimal in the grand scheme of things if we're talking about, 30 walk in, right? What our agenda packet says is they anticipate somewhere between 8 and 13. I think that's probably low, as has been discussed over the last 2 meetings. But, I think we're trying to do what we can, and this isn't opening a release valve that will pour tons of trips out onto the roadways.
Okay, thank you. I have a couple other questions. One is, in the concurrency model that was passed, but that was then invalidated by the Growth Management Hearing Board, if I recall correctly, and if someone could confirm
Point of order.
Well, I'm speaking directly.
We're debating the things. I'm not sure this is Q&A time because we're on the motion. So I just want to make sure that we're sticking to the motion on the floor.
It is relevant to the motion because you just stated that one of I'm sorry, Deputy Mayor, you just stated that one of the rationales, and as did the mayor, that one of the rationales for continuing the moratorium was because we didn't have a V over C component to our concurrency model. So I wanted to ask the question, when we passed the V over C, prior to it being invalidated by the Growth Management Hearing Board, there was not a V over C component on East Lake Sammamish Parkway. Isn't that correct?
If you're looking for an answer from a council member, you're going to need to repeat your question.
Nope.
There's
I would
always
ask staff. That would be directed to staff, that when we pass the V over C concurrency model, it did not apply to East Lake Sammamish Parkway.
The mayor recently removed that exemption by motion that passed.
Yes, the motion was passed that it was, because remember, we were removing it from the concurrency altogether, but then a motion was made to put it back in.
I'm sorry, when a motion was made to put
East Lake Sammamish Parkway back into the
what? But when it was originally passed, it didn't include that, and that's what was in place when the Growth Management Hearing Board invalidated it. Is that correct?
No.
Can someone from staff clarify that for me, please?
This is Jeff, Public Works Director. I would need to research back with staff that are not on the call tonight and answer that question at a later date, as I'm not up to speed explicitly on the question that you're asking. But I'd be happy to research it and bring it back to council at another time.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then, well, now I don't remember what my last question was. All right, thank you.
Okay, council, let's see now, where are we? Councilmember Gamblin.
I'm ready to vote. Thank you.
Councilmember Ross?
So call the question then.
Okay.
I was going to call the question, so I support what Gamblin.
Okay, so we're calling the question. All those in favor of calling the question, say aye. Okay.
Aye.
Anybody else? Thank you.
Okay.
We can just vote.
All those in favor of calling the question, say aye.
No, you don't have to vote on that. There's no one else to make
You said take the vote. I am. Okay, so going to the motion on the floor. Christy, please repeat your motion.
Yes, this is option 2 on renewing the moratorium, but it does provide 2 exemptions. One is public agencies as defined in SMC 21A.15.915 and single-family residents on existing lots and accessory dwelling units.
Okay, and our second was?
Councilmember Ross.
Councilmember Ross. Perfect. Okay, all those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay.
You know what, can you do a roll? Do a roll.
Can we just say it's the usual?
It's really the usual.
Mayor Karen Moran.
Aye.
Councilmember Christy Malchow.
Aye.
Councilmember Ken Gamblin.
Aye.
Councilmember Jason Ritchie.
No.
Councilmember Chris Ross.
Aye.
Councilmember Pamela Stewart.
Nay.
Councilmember Kent Treen.
Aye.
Okay, the motion passes 5-2. Okay, now then, actually, we decided after that we were going to be in need of a health and safety break. So we are going to take a 10-minute, and let's try to be back here in 10. Okay, 10-minute health and safety break. Okay, Council, are we back?
Yep.
Okay, I see one. I want to reassess our schedule here because we have a half an hour.
Don't kid yourself, we're going to be extending that.
Well, that's what I'm thinking we better talk about. Okay. Still missing one? Okay. Oh, there's Pam. Pam's back.
Mayor, is there any interest in tabling something that isn't
We
of
were just talking about
immediate, urgent
Love that
need?
thought. Yes, and I had something in mind. Oh, and Councilmember Treen just joined. Okay, Council, it is 10:30, and we've got a half an hour. So I'm going to make a recommendation, and somebody can tell me something different. But I'm going to make a recommendation that we table perhaps the stormwater stuff to a different meeting, so we can get the other stuff. We can't. I don't want to do. I don't want to table any of the members to the commissions, so that would only leave the stormwater stuff. So what's the thought process? Why don't we see how far we get on the other stuff? If we can hit it, we will. If not, we'll have to table it. Thoughts?
Good. Sounds good.
To a date specific.
Yes.
Yeah, we need a motion.
Is there any deadline or date that we need to hit with that stuff that we need to be cognizant of?
Jeff, are you on the line? Can you answer that question?
There's not a specific requirement, but there is a desire for this item to go forward as soon as possible.
Got it. Thank you.
So move to table item number 20 then, right? To
number 9.
Oh yeah, sorry, number 19. Move to table number 19 until our next regularly scheduled meeting after the retreat.
Okay, we've got a motion and a.
That would be February 2nd.
Okay, motion and a second. I think that was Deputy Mayor. Did you second it? Okay, any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Very sleepy aye. Opposed? Okay. All right, so moving forward, the next thing we have up is Big Rock Park, and I believe, Anjali, if you're online.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. Can you hear me all right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Council, and Mr. City Manager. I'm Anjali Maya, Director of the Parks, Recreation and Facilities Department. Tonight, we are bringing back the Big Rock Park Treehouse programming in front of you. This treehouse sits on Parcel B, or what we now call Big Rock Park Central. I'm happy to report that the Phase 1 improvements are progressing well. The contractor is close to substantial completion, and we are looking to open this parcel to the public sometime in late spring or early summer. You will recall that at the study session held on September 8th of last year, staff responded to council questions on the health of the trees and their ability to support the activity in the treehouse. We walked through the pros and cons of various programming options for the treehouse. As it was not possible to take action that night, we are bringing this back in front of you. Council did have some follow-up questions that night, which we will address in the presentation. With me tonight is Kevin Teague, Deputy Director for the Parks, Recreation and Facilities Department. Kevin oversees the Park Planning Division along with supporting other administrative tasks of the department. He has a short presentation for you, and if possible, it would be great if we can take questions at the end. And with that, I'll turn it over to Kevin.
All right. Thank you very much, Anjali. Thank you, Madam Mayor and City Council. I really appreciate the opportunity to address you regarding the programming of this unique and exciting space at Big Rock Park. Just give you a little bit of background, and then I'll recap the Treehouse programming options, and then we'll talk about Park and Recreation Commission's recommendation, and then I'll give you responses to the City Council questions from the September 8th meeting. And we are asking for Council's recommendation this evening regarding programming of the Treehouse. Tonight we are looking for direction from the Council to approve a preferred Treehouse programming option at Big Rock Park Central. As Anjali mentioned, September 8th was a study session, so no action was taken. But at that time, we understood the preferred option was to open the Treehouse 4 times a month seasonally and to allow schools to utilize the Treehouse for environmental education. So on September 8th, staff presented 4 different options for opening the Treehouse, and then staff gave you their recommendation as well as the recommendation of the Park and Rec Commission. And then Council had some follow-up questions regarding the operation of the Treehouse. Regarding the Treehouse programming, the first of the 4 options was to open the Treehouse during park hours, so it would be open anytime the park was open. There was concern raised that this option would increase wear and tear on the trees as well as on the Treehouse. The second option was to open the Treehouse 4 times per month. That would be 2 weekdays and 2 weekends per month during the time frame of approximately March through October. The third option is similar to the second, although it would be to open 2 times per month, and that would be 1 weekday and 1 weekend per month, and in that same rough timeline of March to October. And then the last option was to open 2 or 3 times per year, the thinking being maybe once in spring, once in summer, and once in fall. Staff's recommendation was either option 2 or option 3, opening the Treehouse either 2 or 4 times per month. The recommendation from the Parks and Recreation Commission was to open the Treehouse 4 times per month seasonally. And then I want to just speak to the questions that Council raised the night of September 8th when we presented this before. The first question was, will schools use the Treehouse if it isn't fully ADA accessible? And the answer is yes, on a class-by-class basis. Our staff reached out to the Lake Washington School District and to the Issaquah School District, and it was confirmed that both those districts would utilize the Treehouse if they had a class that did not have a disabled student that couldn't navigate the stairs. If they had a student like that, then they wouldn't utilize the Treehouse. The second question was, can the city rent out the Treehouse to private groups if it isn't ADA accessible? The answer to that one is also yes. The city can rent out the Treehouse to private groups, provided that all potential renters are warned of the accessibility limitations. That being said, the Washington City's Insurance Authority requires the city to obtain special liability insurance coverage from renters of all city facilities. The WCIA checked with their primary underwriters, and they had them review a draft rental contract, and the underwriters declined to provide special liability insurance coverage for rentals at the treehouse due to increased risk. So while it is possible that there are other vendors that would do so, it shows that there would be difficulty for insurance providers to be comfortable issuing certificates of liability insurance for any renters at the treehouse. For this reason, and due to limited resources and limited infrastructure, staff does not recommend renting the treehouse to private groups, at least in the first few years of operation. The last question that staff had was, that the council had for staff was to look into other accessibility options, primarily the elevator that serves the treehouse on the Microsoft campus in Redmond. So staff visited the elevator on campus at Microsoft. These are some photos of that elevator. On the left is the ground level entrance to the elevator, and the right is the full size of the elevator. We were told from the Microsoft staff that when they initially put the elevator in, they had solid panels, but it was too dark, and so they were able to change those panels out to plexiglass. There's a couple more views. This one on the left is up at the treehouse level. The top, you can see the shed roof, but again, the plexiglass, and then the full shot there on the right. This is a plan view of our treehouse at Big Rock Park. And if we were to go with the option of the elevator, it could go on the north side of the conference room at the same location where a ramp would attach if we did that option. Just a few pros and cons here. We do feel like the cost of the elevator would be lower than the ramp. There would be some ease and speed to construction. It would be universally accessible, provide universal access, meaning that any type of elevator or wheelchair could fit in that lift. And it would have a smaller footprint than the ramp. Some of the cons, the big one being the aesthetic. We showed this to the Parks and Rec Commission, and they were very concerned about how that would fit in with the treehouse and the theme there at Big Rock Park. It would also be a potential target for vandalism. Being a mechanical structure, that mechanical portion could fail. It would require service and cleaning, and it would be restricted. It would provide you restricted use, unlike a ramp, whereas an able-bodied person can walk up the ramp. The elevator would be primarily for those with disabilities. So there's no decision needed on the ADA access tonight. We wanted to show you what we've been looking into. Staff's recommendation regarding the access to the treehouse is to wait 1 to 2 years to see how the treehouse holds up, and so that we can understand any of the operational challenges that go along with operating a treehouse. So with that, we move to the council recommendation, and we're looking for direction from council that you would approve a preferred treehouse programming option at Big Rock Park. And there are the 4 options there on the screen. Previously, the favored option was to open 4 times a month seasonally, and to allow schools to utilize the treehouse for environmental education by obtaining a special use permit. So with that, I will stop, and I'm glad to answer any questions.
Okay, we do have some. So first we have got Deputy Mayor, followed by Councilmember Treen.
Yeah, I'm just going to open this up with a motion, and I move the City Council approve option 2 for programming the treehouse.
I second that.
Okay, excellent. We have a
I
motion.
speak to the motion.
Yes, we have a motion on the floor and a second. And Deputy Mayor, please speak to your motion.
Thanks. I think with this option, it extends the life of the trees supporting the house, or at least gives us some initial look into how well the trees do with more activity in there than we've seen before. It's an asset that our city has, and it's one that shouldn't be overused, but should certainly be allowed to be used. And I think this opportunity to do programming for the treehouse begs the opportunity to publicly thank Mary Piggott again for donating the land and this amazing asset to the city. The city never would have been able to purchase the number of acres that she has donated to us on our own. And the fact that she has chosen to donate this land to the city and this amazing treehouse as an asset, we should not squander this opportunity to publicly thank Mary Piggott again for this.
And I'd also, if I might add in, Mayor, that wanted to thank the Anjali and Kevin Teague and the Parks and Recs Commission too for the hard work that they've been doing, looking at all the information and bringing this forward. Appreciate for all the hard work you're doing and the time dedicated to the parks. Appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm excited to get this open and let people go and see, and I think people are going to love it. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, and we have a second.
So one more. I'm sorry, I just have a question.
We have questions. We have got Councilmember Ross.
I'm sorry. I support the motion, and I think absolutely we found a way to use the asset without significant wear and tear. I just had a question to staff because it was reported to me recently that even with the Reared House fenced off, there's people coming from around the area on a daily basis and going up and down the treehouse unsupervised, and that's wear and tear and risk from a liability standpoint as well. How are we going to secure that area?
There, as part of the construction at Big Rock Park, there will be a gate installed at the top of the stairs of the tree house. Now, that will prevent some access. Other than that, we'll be watching it closely, and if other measures need to be taken, then we would pursue those.
Isn't it fenced off currently, though? How are they scaling the fence?
Apparently, you're not scaling the fence. They're coming from the backside across from the adjacent area.
But the treehouse itself, at least the last time I saw it, had a fence around it.
Well, they're getting in the treehouse is what's been shared with me.
We have had some reports of people up there, and there was some damage to one of the doors, but we weren't certain if that was vandalism or anything, or if the door didn't get latched and then the wind blew it and it broke the glass. But we're not aware of we'd like to find out more if people are accessing it when they shouldn't be.
That's too bad, because a lot of the glass in the treehouse is from they were reclaimed glass.
Fortunately, the glass that was broken was in one of the doors. It wasn't that beautiful stained glass.
Okay, no, I think some of the other glass in there may have been reclaimed too, but anyway, it is what it is at this point, I guess. I would recommend we might try to do some other things to secure it then until we're ready for it to be open to the public.
All right.
Okay, we have another question here from Councilmember Ritchie.
Thank you. My question is, I appreciate the ADA solution that you're working on. That seems reasonable to me. My other concern that was just spoken about was a security issue. I appreciate Councilmember Ross and or Deputy Mayor Malchow mentioning those issues. It's my opinion that we should not open up the treehouse unless or until we have adequate security. I appreciate that people want to get in there and do good things and utilize it in a way that Mary Piggott, God bless her for donating this park, this land, this treehouse to our city. But I think we would be remiss in our stewardship of it if we did not figure out a way to better secure it. I don't know what that looks like. I mean, I wrote down cameras when I was reading through the packet, and I don't know how that would work. I mean, what are we just going to have some sort of closed circuit camera system, maybe solar? Something needs to be done to secure this, because the God forbid scenarios that run through my mind are some kid climbing up there with fireworks, lighting on fire, somebody just wrecking the place before we even, it's in such a secluded place. And we just can't, how do you lay eyes on it 24/7? You know, what does that look like? And are we putting ourselves in this asset and the health and safety of our I'm assuming children, but of somebody that may be making poor choices? Are we putting them at risk by what? It's kind of like having an attractive nuisance, right? It's something, it's not a nuisance, but it's like if you have something that is going to attract attention, have we done what we need to do? Is a fence sufficient? Is a lock on the door sufficient? I mean, you buy an elevator, this is going to cost tens of thousands of dollars to put in, and somebody could wreck it. I don't know what that looks like. I'm not saying we should stop. I think people should gain access to it. I just don't feel comfortable with the due diligence that we've done thus far with the attractive nuisance consideration and the potential risk and liability to the city if somebody makes a bad choice and goes up there and hurts themselves, or God forbid themselves, or just damages it beyond repair, or any number of anything in between there. I just think we need to pause and think about our options to at least mitigate or consider our risks there going forward. Thank you.
And I have to say, I tend to agree with Councilmember Ritchie on this, is that it is our job to make sure that we've secured that to keep it safe until we're ready to open it.
One other item that I failed to mention was that our staff is currently installing plexiglass over the existing glass to protect it from, say, rocks being thrown at it and that sort of thing. And I think Councilman Ritchie, you bring up a good point. We have a couple of different things at play in terms of when the treehouse is open. Our plan is to have a docent or a volunteer there on site, a site monitor at that time when the treehouse is open. The other issue is when the treehouse is not open, and how do we protect it from people damaging it.
And to that, I'll add that, we did have a consideration for adding security cameras in our parks. We tabled that discussion because there was a lot of resistance, both from our commission as well as the initial discussion with City Council. But, if there is a need, as we are ready to open it, again, for when it's open, we will have it monitored. But for when it is closed off, if there are increasing concerns, we'd be happy at that time to bring back the security cameras for consideration to City Council.
Okay. Councilmember Stewart?
Well, will it be any more difficult to secure the treehouse when it's not open, if it is sometimes open, than if it was just never open at all?
I don't think it'll be more difficult. It would be a matter of fencing. I think the fencing that's out there now is temporary construction fencing. And so maybe that's a little more porous. People can get through that somehow. I don't know. That's something we can look into.
Great, thank you.
Okay, seeing no more questions, we have a motion on the floor in a second. Deputy Mayor, did you want to repeat your motion?
Sure. is simply that we approve option 2 for programming of the Treehouse, which, as shown up here, is open 4 times a month seasonally.
Okay, the motion is on the floor. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
No.
Okay, who was the nay?
Regretfully, it was Jason.
Okay. Okay, so it is a 6-1. Motion passes. Okay, next we have, and we're going to have to extend, so we might as well do it now. So I need a motion to extend. How long do you think we're going to need? Probably, what, 15 minutes more? Okay. So we're going to have to extend for 15 minutes more. So I need a motion to extend to 11:15.
So moved.
Second.
And we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, let's do this.
Mayor Moran, City Council, thank you. This is Tammy Miller, Management Analyst in the City Clerk's Office. I've been facilitating the commission and board interview and appointment process. Firstly, thank you so much for all of your cooperation with this new virtual process. It's been a learning experience for all of us, which the power outage didn't help any. So thank you for your patience as we wrangled everything and got it together for you tonight. I also, for any of the applicants who are listening, or for posterity's sake, I just want to extend my thanks to them as well. Every single applicant has been so cooperative and understanding with this process, so thank you so much. That being said, tonight, since we're not operating in paper, we've asked you to submit your nominations already, and you have. Thank you so much. We were able to tabulate that, so you don't have to watch me doing that for 10 minutes. I am going to try, I'm going to cover you up here on the screen, and we're going to share, starting with oh, I have to share? No, it's not up there? What do I have to do? I'm still learning. We will be sharing with you shortly for the Arts Commission, which is the next item on your agenda, the nomination results. Sorry, got my head in your way. All right. I believe everyone should be seeing that now. It says people can see my screen, so I would assume so. Okay, thank you so much. This has been a team effort here. Okay, so since we have everything tabulated for you, I've tried to provide the additional information on here, so you don't have to reference your packets as much as in previous years. There were 3 open positions on the Arts Commission, positions 1, 2, and 3, to make it easy for you. One of those, position 3, is only 1 year in length because it was a term that was vacated by the previously appointed commissioner. So there's 1 year left on the term that needs to be filled. Typically, what's been done in the past is that the person with the most votes gets the longest term, and then the next person gets the next longest term, and so forth. We have highlighted for you, and for your ease of reference, and you'll see this for each of the boards and commissions, the person with the most votes, number 1, the next, number 2, and 3. So with that, I will turn it over to Mayor Moran. If you would like to open this up for any discussion as necessary, or a motion to assign the positions.
Deputy Mayor?
I was actually in the queue first, if that's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Councilmember Stewart.
Yeah, so I was just going to go ahead and make a motion that we appoint Barbara Kraus to position 1, that we appoint Megan, and I am not going to butcher her last name, to position 2, and that we appoint Barbara Jersa to position 3 on the Arts Commission.
Second.
Any discussion? Okay.
I just want to apologize to Megan, but I thought it was respectful not to say her name.
Okay. We have a motion and a second on the floor. All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent. Well, welcome aboard. They'll do a great job. And thank you to all those that applied. It's exciting. I think it's the first time that I've actually seen a full Arts Commission and extras applying. I mean, that's amazing. So I'm really grateful that everybody put names in. So thank you. Yep, keep going. It's all yours.
All right, thank you. So the next was the Beaver Lake Management District Advisory Board. It should be on your screen now. We had one applicant and then another applicant who applied to the Planning Commission who requested to be considered for the Beaver Lake Management District Advisory Board, if not selected for the Planning Commission. All 7 nominations were for the primary applicant, Mr. Tom McGinnis. So I hope that makes the decision easy.
Yes, I think it does. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you. I move that we appoint Tom McGinnis to the Beaver Lake Management District Advisory Board.
Councilmember Stewart. Okay, we have a first and a second. Discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor say aye.
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 Opposed?
Aye.
Okay, hearing none. Welcome aboard, Mr. McGinnis.
All right. Well, as you might be able to tell from my tabs at the bottom, the Human Services Commission did encounter a tie. But first, we will. There were 2 open positions, both of them full 4-year terms. Julie Varnas received 5 nominations. And there was a tie, 3 each, for Mr. Richard Bennick and current Commissioner and Chair Tom Ehlers of the Human Services Commission. That said, we will need to resolve that tie in order to determine which gets the appointed to that 4-year term. In the past, what we've done is had a tiebreaker where we will ask. Again, we can't operate on paper, so we will have to do this verbally. But we would ask each of you to choose between one of the 2 applicants and vote just between them. So you would get 1 vote each. Does that sound acceptable?
What's the what would the council like to do?
Yeah.
Let's rock and roll.
Let's go.
Okay, rock and roll.
1 vote.
All right. I will be going from left to right then. Councilmember Gamblin?
Mr. Bennick, please.
Deputy Mayor Malchow?
Mr. Bennick.
Mayor Moran?
Mr. Ehlers.
Councilmember Ritchie?
Chair Ehlers.
All right, Councilmember Ross,
Mr. Bennick.
Councilmember Stewart,
Mr. Ellers.
okay, Councilmember Treen,
Our seniors.
Benak.
okay. Mr. Bennick has received more votes. So that said, we'll go ahead. Ooh, 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 ooh. Oh, technical difficulty. I apologize for that. Try to make it a little easier there. All right.
Okay, so welcome aboard, Mr. Bennick. And I want to thank Mr. Ellers for his years of service on this commission. I don't know, he's done an amazing job. Okay, so I need to have a motion.
I don't see anyone in the queue, but I'm happy to make it.
Okay.
I move that we appoint Julie Varner and Richard Bennick to the Human Services Commission.
I'll second.
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent.
All right, thank you. We're a little bit out of alphabetical order, but we're going to do planning next. I believe that is next on the agenda. Okay. There were 4 applicants to the Planning Commission and 2 open positions. Position 3 is a 2-year term, and position 5 is a full 4-year term. Applicant Karen Malcolm received 6 votes, and applicants Dave Barron and Thorin T.C. Labby each received 3, so we do have another tiebreaker. All right. And to take the pressure off Councilmember Treen, if we do another tiebreaker, could I start with you?
Thorin.
All right. Okay. Councilmember Stewart.
Mr. Barron.
Councilmember Ross.
Thorne.
Councilmember Ritchie.
Mr. Thorne.
Mayor Moran.
Thorne.
All right. Deputy Mayor Malchow.
Mr. Labby?
And Councilmember Gamblin.
Mr. Labby, please.
All right, thank you. With that, Thorin T.C. Labby has received the majority of the votes. Okay.
I move we appoint Karen Malcolm and Thorin Labby to the Planning Commission.
Could we get a clarity on which position?
They have 2 different terms. So I think, yeah, sorry. So Karen Malcolm for position 5, Thorin Labby for position 3.
Okay. And I believe Councilmember Ross, you were a second. Any discussion? All those in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Opposed? Excellent.
All right, thank you. Lastly, we had the Parks and Recreation Commission. There were 4 open positions, and they are positions 1, 2, and 3 are 4-year terms, with position 6 being a 2-year term. This one, there was no tiebreaker necessary. We had applicant Emily Snyder receive the majority of the votes, followed by reapplying Commissioner Cheryl Wagner, applicant Tracy Smith, and then Mahendra Thacker.
Okay, I'm looking for a motion.
I move to approve the resolution appointing the 4 members of the Parks and Rec Commission and positions as ranked. So position 1 would be rank 1, that's Emily. Position 2 would be Cheryl Wagner. Position 3 would be Tracy Smith, and position 6 would be Mr. Thacker.
Okay. Second?
Second.
Okay. So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excellent.
All right. Yeah, that concludes the commission appointments for 2021. Thank you so much.
Thank you. That worked relatively quickly. Very nice. Thank you. Okay, next we have got council reports and city manager reports. Mr. City Manager?
I'm good tonight, thank you.
I was afraid you went to sleep on us. Okay. And then we've got Deputy Mayor. She's got a report that is there. Did you have anything you needed to report on that?
Yeah, I did. No, nothing that's in there specifically, but I did. Hopefully, you all saw that email that I sent to David Pyle relative to legislation that is due to be discussed in one of the. No, I'm forgetting if it's a House committee or Senate committee. I think it's a House committee relative to wireless communications. Again, my concern there was that they were trying to consolidate the applications and they were shortening the timeline. I know that this is currently in the Planning Commission and that our Planning Commission, may get work done, but the legislature can change that. So my concern again was that this was putting undue pressure on staff to shorten the timeline to which from 120 down to 60 days. And also the consolidation of the application concerned me from the standpoint of the public because these small cell wireless towers have to be situated in close proximity and lower to the ground. Consolidating a permit could preempt, I guess, residents from getting involved and being able to comment on it, not knowing that something was going to be in their neighborhood. And literally, the small cell towers will be in neighborhoods because they have to be that close together. So I would argue that our council should take a position on this bill. I was planning on testifying anyway as an individual, but I'd be happy to do so on behalf of the council if the council wants to take a position.
And Dave Pyle has that, so we should probably follow that bill as it comes through, if you want to keep us updated on it.
Well, it's in committee on Thursday, which is why I'm bringing it up tonight. So if we're not comfortable taking a position tonight, then we don't need to, then I will just testify on my own and not on behalf of council, but I would highly recommend that we stay on top of this and provide feedback as needed.
Christy, what's your position?
I'm not for it. I think it's and AWC has taken a position. They are not in favor of it either because it takes away local control.
I agree.
I feel like we need to get a little more info. It's just going through committee now. So could we put this on the list and have some more in-depth? I'm not arguing with what you're saying. I'm just feeling like I don't have enough details to take a position on it at this moment. And because it is just in committee, there's still time for us to take a position if we were to choose to do so.
Yeah, I brought it up in advance of this meeting, knowing that it was coming and that if we didn't talk about it here, there was not an opportunity for us. And of course, when things are in committee is a great time to not have them get on the floor if we're against them. So that's why I wanted to bring it up.
totally appreciate that. Just haven't had the opportunity to get that level of detail, and I feel like it's really important that we have that.
Okay, and
I think I sent you guys the information so you can read it.
I have not.
Yeah, you did.
I don't feel like I haven't read it, so I don't have enough information either. Okay, so I do want to take a moment and again thank all of those that applied for all of the different commissions and committees this evening, because you know, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. So again, I want to thank everybody that applied. And if you didn't make it on this time, please, that doesn't mean that you won't make it on next time. So we really do try to rotate people through, and so please, you know, stay in touch, and thank you very much for applying. Okay, so council, I think that does it. How about a motion?
Wait, if I can make a comment, please?
Yeah.
Okay.
I withdraw my motion.
Deputy Mayor?
I just wanted to make a quick comment if I can. I just wanted to, yes, thank you. So just based on what you said, I think it is worthwhile, you know, making a comment about the commissions. It's very hard, especially when we have a lot of applicants. I think it's fabulous that we have so many new people that have come forward and want to get involved with the city. It is never an easy decision, you know, especially if you have commissioners that have served time here. I always think it's important that we give people that are wanting to volunteer their time for the city an opportunity to get involved. It's certainly not reflective of anyone's the work that they've done on a commission at all. We have some fabulous people in the city, but anyways, I just wanted to, you know, it's great when we have more people for every spot than we can fill, which is sometimes an unfortunate position, but I think it speaks volumes about the level of interest that our community and our constituents have in the work that we do and in helping informing the council. So, thanks.
Okay.
Mayor, this is Jason.
Yes. Councilmember Ritchie?
Mayor, if I can, may I have a point of, yes, thank you. May I have 30 seconds of personal privilege, please?
Yes.
Thank you. The City of Sammamish, bear with me. The City of Sammamish has an incredible opportunity in the town center development, which will bring services and housing diversity that our city desperately needs. We have an obligation to find solutions, not create roadblocks. It is unfair, in my opinion, and inappropriate that this council has chosen a path of obstruction in the form of continuous moratorium. I'd like to thank the residents of Sammamish for the opportunity to serve on the City Council. And at this time, due to these recent actions by this council, I'll be resigning the council effective immediately. Thank you.
Wow, sorry to hear you.
Okay.
Thank you for your service, Jason.
Thank you for serving, Councilmember Ritchie.
Wow.
Thanks for the opportunity, guys. Good luck to you.
Yeah, thanks.
Jason, we're going to miss you, and the residents were well served by you. You worked hard, and I think you probably worked harder than anyone to try to find the middle ground on this council, something that we desperately need. So thank you.
Thanks, guys. Good luck to you. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Jason.
Okay.
With that, I would like to move to adjourn.
Second.
Please.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 We adjourned.
We are adjourned.